The Utah desert was never quiet, not really. Even in the dead of night, the air whispered secrets, old ones, through the rustling sagebrush and the shifting sands. But tonight, beneath the dim flicker of moonlight and the echo of footsteps, something ancient stood below ground at Blind Frog Ranch. Dwayne Ollinger stood at the entrance of a newly discovered shaft, a lantern in one hand and a clenched jaw. Behind him, Chad Ollinger and geologist Eric Drummond exchanged anxious glances. They'd been down countless holes on the property over the past few years, each one more bizarre and dangerous than the last. But this one felt different. The chamber had been found accidentally. Chad had been scanning for anomalies with ground-penetrating radar near the North Mesa, far outside their usual dig zone, when the equipment went haywire. The radar lit up like a Christmas tree, revealing an air pocket below dense basalt, buried deeper than any chamber they'd found before. Dwayne had called it just another cave. Eric disagreed. "This isn't natural," Eric had muttered. "Look at the symmetry. It's carved." So here they were, climbing down into what they initially thought might be an ancient mine shaft. But what they would find inside would rewrite every theory they'd ever had about the land, and maybe even about who, or what, had once called this place home. The descent shaft was narrow, reinforced by rotted wood beams and thick roots, as if the earth itself was trying to reclaim it. The deeper they descended, the more the air thickened, hot and heavy, like a sealed tomb. 30 feet in, the wooden supports gave way to something more deliberate. Chiseled stone, smooth and angular. "Someone made this," Chad whispered. Charcoal residue clung to the ceiling like dark cobwebs. Something had burned here. Recently. Eric knelt near the center of the room, where charred bones lay scattered across a stone slab, forming a grim centerpiece. "Guys," he said, his voice unsteady, "these aren't animal bones." Dwayne raised his lantern, and the light bounced off the surrounding walls, revealing a ring of skulls embedded in the rock. They were blackened, hollowed out, and cracked, charred. "Human," Eric confirmed. Chad backed up. "You sure?" "Too symmetrical. Jaw structures unmistakable. And the burn marks. This wasn't a burial. This was a ritual." Dwayne was silent, his weathered face creased in both rage and confusion. "Why the hell would someone bury this under a ranch in Utah?" he growled. Eric's voice dropped. "Because they didn't want it found." Signs of the unseen. The chamber walls weren't just burnt. They were carved. Glyphs twisted around the room in spiraling, chaotic patterns. Some looked vaguely Mesoamerican, while others were unfamiliar entirely. Shapes that defied logical structure. Eric brushed away ash from a low wall. "This one," he said, tracing a jagged spiral. "It's not Aztec, but it resembles a variation of Akal, the wind god. But these additions here," he pointed to interlocking triangles carved around the spiral. "This is older. This predates Mesoamerican culture entirely. I don't recognize it." Chad knelt beside a pile of debris and sifted through rubble. His fingers brushed something solid. "Guys," he said slowly, "I think I found a box." Dwayne and Eric rushed over. Chad held up a small obsidian cube, black as night and etched with similar glyphs. It was cool to the touch, unnaturally so, given the heat inside the chamber. "It's sealed," Dwayne said. "No hinges." Chad turned it in his hands, and as he did, the room suddenly felt colder. A deep rumble echoed through the shaft above. Dust fell from the ceiling. The walls trembled. "Time to get out," Dwayne barked. Escape and aftershock. They scrambled back through the tunnel just as another tremor rattled the chamber. A rockfall collapsed the lower passage behind them, burying the charred chamber beneath tons of rubble. Back at the surface, the team gasped for breath beneath a star-choked sky. "What the hell just happened?" Chad asked. Eric turned the obsidian cube over in his hands again. "Something down there didn't want us to leave with this." Duane looked back at the collapsed entrance, eyes narrowed. Or someone. Theories, and first the next morning, the team sat around the camp's makeshift operations table. Eric had scanned the cube with every instrument they had: thermal, X-ray, even EMF. The results were baffling. The object emitted low-frequency electromagnetic pulses in a rhythmic pattern. It was like a heartbeat. "I think it's a seal," Eric said. "Not a box. It's meant to contain something." Chad frowned. "Contain what?" Before Eric could answer, the monitors flickered. The generator outside began to whine. Radios crackled to life with static-laced whispers. A cold wind swept through the ranch, unusual for late June. Duane stood, reaching instinctively for his sidearm. "We need to bury that damn thing." Eric shot him a glare. "If this is what was sealing whatever's down there, what if we can't just hide it?" Duane said. "What if we already opened something we shouldn't have?" That night, Eric stayed awake, studying the glyphs they had documented. He matched the symbols against old South American, Native Ute, and even Sumerian databases. One pattern kept recurring, a combination of flame and wind, chaos and time. It told the story of sacrifice. Not just humans, but entire communities burned as offerings to something called Solquin, the flame below. Returned to the ruins despite Duane's warnings. Eric and Chad returned to the cave site 2 days later. The rubble was still smoking. Ash still hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. They brought with them new equipment: a drone, laser mapping devices, and a motion-triggered camera array. Eric lowered a small robotic crawler into a narrow gap in the rubble where the chamber once opened. The feed came online. At first, the chamber looked the same. Blackened. Still. Then, a flicker. In the corner of the screen, a figure. Charred, skeletal, but moving. The feed cut to black. "Did you see that?" Chad shouted. Eric backed away from the monitor. "We're not alone down there." The government RFSB the following morning. 3 unmarked black SUVs pulled up to the ranch. Men in suits and desert camouflage stepped out, showing no credentials, asking no questions. One of them approached Duane. "We need the object," the man said flatly. Duane crossed his arms. "Don't know what you're talking about." The man didn't blink. "That chamber was a sealed vault. Your dig disturbed a federal containment site." Chad scoffed. "It was under our land." The agent replied, "It wasn't meant to stay buried because of you. It was buried because of what it holds." Duane refused to give them the cube, but later that night, their storage container was ransacked. The cube was gone. The next day, their GPS mapping data of the shaft was erased remotely. Their hard drives wiped. Their camera feeds glitched into static. Aftermath and the legend of Duck Weeks passed. The tremors continued, not just at Blind Frog Ranch, but miles beyond. Locals reported seeing shadows in the desert, hearing whispers in the wind. Cattle turned up burnt. Old mines collapsed without explanation. Eric pieced together what he could from memory, building a composite theory. Solquin wasn't a god. It was something older. A force, or entity, sealed beneath the surface by ancient civilizations who understood its hunger for fire and blood. The skulls in the chamber. Offerings. Sacrifices to keep it dormant. And now, they were disturbed. Final words, Duane, no longer talks about the chamber. Chad won't go near the North Mesa. And Eric, once a man of science, now wears a small obsidian pendant around his neck, carved with the same glyphs he once dismissed as meaningless. Blind Frog Ranch has always been haunted by mystery. But some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. The ground trembled beneath their boots. Dust filtered through the cracks in the wooden beams above as Duane Ollinger adjusted the straps of his helmet and took a cautious step forward. The stifling air in the shaft was thick with the scent of scorched earth and mildew. For months, the Blind Frog Ranch crew had suspected something unnatural lay beneath the eastern slope. Now, standing on the precipice of a recently unearthed tunnel, they were about to prove it. Chad Ollinger, Duane's son, held up the flashlight and aimed it down the sloping tunnel. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing walls lined with black residue. It didn't look like soot from any ordinary fire. It looked ancient, baked into the rock as if the chamber had survived a volcanic eruption. "That smell," Chad muttered, squinting ahead. "Like burnt hair and copper." Behind them, geologist Eric Drummond checked his portable gas monitor and glanced at his thermal camera. "Readings are spiking," Eric said. "Kill 2 levels are high. And something else, something metallic. The temperature's off the charts." Duane gave a determined nod. "Only one way to find out what's cooking down there." They descended, one cautious step at a time, the beam from Chad's flashlight dancing across the cavernous interior of the shaft. This wasn't a natural formation. It was carved, ancient, and deliberate. As they reached the bottom, the space opened into a circular room, silent, foreboding, and absolutely wrong. At the center of the chamber lay a stone platform, jagged and blackened, and atop it, the remains. They were fused to the stone, jawbones twisted open in silent screams. The sockets were hollow and scorched, some partially melted. Around the perimeter of the room, fragments of bone had been scattered like relics in a forgotten shrine. Eric dropped to one knee beside the platform, his hand trembling as he brushed away ash and debris. These aren't just burned. They were incinerated. Temperatures like this don't happen from a regular fire. We're talking over 2,000 degrees.